The metallic taste of blood filled Zara's mouth as consciousness returned like a cruel tide. Her crystalline blue skin was streaked with dirt, and her silver hair hung in tangled strands across her face. The proud insignia of the Nexari Royal Guard on her torn uniform meant nothing now. She was alone on this derelict space station, her squad eliminated in the ambush that had torn through their ranks like a plasma storm. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Deliberate and measured. Zara pressed herself against the cold. Bulkhead, knowing escape was impossible with her injured leg. The human appeared around the corner, his tactical armor scarred from countless battles. Marcus Kane, according to the nameplate she glimpsed. His dark eyes swept the area before settling on her position. She expected the rough handling, the binding, the immediate interrogation. Instead, he knelt slowly, hands visible and empty. His weathered face showed no malice, only a strange kind of weariness. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly gentle. "You're hurt," he said, nodding toward the plasma burn on her thigh. "Let me help." Zara's training screamed warnings. This was a trick, a manipulation tactic. Humans were known for their deception, their willingness to exploit any weakness. Yet, when he produced a medical kit and began treating her wound with careful precision, she found herself studying his face. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of loss, now not cruelty. The biofoam hissed as it sealed the wound, and Marcus's hands were steady and professional. When she flinched from the sting, he paused, meeting her gaze with something that looked almost like concern. This wasn't how enemy soldiers were supposed to behave. "Why?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from the smoke she'd inhaled during the attack. Marcus finished bandaging her leg before answering. "Because you're not my enemy," he said simply. "The war is. You're just caught in it, same as me." Before she could respond, the distant sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the station. Marcus rose quickly, offering her his hand. "We need to move. My unit thinks I'm dead, and yours will be looking for survivors. Neither of us is safe here alone." Against every instinct, every piece of training, Zara took his hand. His grip was strong but not crushing, steadying her as she stood. As they moved deeper into the abandoned station, she realized he wasn't positioning her as a shield. Instead, he kept himself between her and potential danger, his weapon ready to protect them both. The maintenance tunnels beneath the station were a maze of twisted metal and failing life support systems. Marcus led the way with a confidence that spoke of military experience, his scanner painting their path in soft blue light. Zara followed, her enhanced hearing picking up sounds he missed, the skitter of maintenance drones, the whisper of air. Through damaged vents, the distant voices of search teams. "Left here," she whispered, catching his arm. 3 heat signatures approaching from ahead. Marcus turned to look at her, and she saw something shift in his expression. Not suspicion, but a kind of grateful acknowledgement. "Good ears," he said. Adjusting their route without question, they moved through a service bay where a twisted wreckage provided cover. Zara expected him to use her as a distraction, maybe send her ahead to draw fire while he flanked the enemy. Instead, when plasma bolts began raining down on their position, Marcus pushed her behind cover and stepped into the line of fire himself. "Stay down," he commanded, returning fire with disciplined bursts. A bolt scorched the air where his head had been moments before, and Zara watched in amazement as he repositioned himself again, always keeping his body between her and the hostile forces. When the firing stopped, she emerged from cover to find him reloading. A shallow burn across his shoulder where his armor had failed. "You're injured," she said, reaching for him instinctively. "It's nothing," Marcus replied, but he didn't pull away when her fingers traced the edge of the wound. Her touch was gentle, and she felt him tense slightly under her hands. Not from pain, she realized, but from something else entirely. "Why do you keep protecting me?" she asked, meeting his eyes in the dim emergency lighting. "I'm your prisoner. By all logic, you should be using me as a shield." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him wrestling with something internal. "My sister was about your age when the war started," he finally said. "She was a communications officer on a civilian transport when the raiders hit. Her captain tried to use her as a bargaining chip." offered her life in exchange for safe passage for the rest of the crew. Zara felt her breath catch. What happened? The raiders took the deal, then killed everyone anyway. His voice was flat, controlled, but she could hear the pain underneath. I swore that day I'd never let anyone else become a sacrifice for someone else's survival. The weight of his words settled between them like a bridge neither had expected. To cross, Zara found herself seeing this human not as an enemy, but as someone carrying his own wounds, his own losses. When he offered his hand to help her up, she took it without hesitation. The storm that caught them was unlike anything in Zara's experience. The space station's hull groaned under the assault of charged particles and electromagnetic fury that could tear through their bodies at the molecular level. Marcus pulled her into an abandoned crew quarters, sealing the blast door behind them, just as the corridor filled with deadly energy. The small room forced them into close quarters, sharing the single functioning air recycler and the meager warmth from an emergency heating unit. Zara sat on the narrow bunk while Marcus checked their equipment, but she could feel his awareness of her presence in every movement he made. How long will the storm last? She asked, wrapping her arms around herself. The temperature was dropping. Steadily. Could be hours, Marcus replied, then looked up at her shivering form. Without hesitation, he moved to sit beside her, opening his jacket. Body heat is more efficient shared. Zara hesitated for only a moment before moving closer. His warmth was immediate and welcome, and she felt some of the tension leave her muscles. As he wrapped his jacket around them both, this close, she could smell his scent, clean sweat, metal, and something uniquely him that made her pulse quicken. Tell me about her, she said softly. Your sister. Marcus was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a tenderness she hadn't heard before. Her name was Emma. She had this laugh that could light up a room, and she collected pressed flowers from every planet she visited. Always said she wanted to see the universe bloom. His arm tightened slightly around her, and Zara found herself leaning into his strength. She sounds wonderful. She would have liked you, he said, and something in his tone made her look up at him. Their faces were very close in the dim light, and she could see the pain and longing in his eyes. You have her courage. The space between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. Zara had never been this close to a human before, never felt this strange pull towards someone from another species. When Marcus's hand came up to gently brush a strand of silver hair from her face, she didn't pull away. Zara, he whispered her name like a prayer, and she felt something fundamental shift inside. Her chest, the war, their opposing sides, all of it seemed distant and unimportant compared to the gentle strength in his touch. This is dangerous, she breathed, even as she found herself moving closer. Everything worthwhile is, Marcus replied, his thumb tracing the crystalline patterns along her cheekbone. But some things are worth the risk. When their lips met, it was soft and tentative, a question rather than a demand. Zara answered by deepening the kiss, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. The enemy stronghold loomed before them like a metal mountain, its towers bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Zara's people, the Nexari, held this fortress. And somewhere within its walls was the communication relay that could end the war or escalate it beyond all control. The access codes I gave you will get us to the lower levels, Zara said, watching. Marcus studied the fortress through his scope. But the relay chamber will be heavily guarded. 3 days had passed since the storm. 3 days of traveling together, fighting together, growing closer with each shared danger. What had begun as protective custody had become something neither of them could name, a bond that transcended species in conflict. Marcus lowered his scope and turned to her. There's something you need to know. My orders aren't just to reach the relay. I'm supposed to destroy it. Zara felt the blood drained from her face. That relay contains the locations of every Nexari colony ship, millions of my people fleeing the war zones. If you destroy it, they'll be lost in space, defenseless against raids and resource conflicts, Marcus finished grimly. I know, but my commanders believe it's the only way to force a surrender. They stared at each other across a chasm that suddenly seemed infinite. Duty, loyalty, the lives of millions hanging in the balance. Zara realized she had been naive to think their feelings could exist separate from the war. "So what now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "Do you take me in as your prisoner? Use me to get close enough to complete your mission?" Marcus's expression was tortured. "Could never use you like that, never." He moved closer, his hands reaching for hers. "Come with me. We'll find another way. Together. There has to be a solution that doesn't require genocide." Before she could answer, the whine of approaching aircraft filled the air. Nexari patrol. Ships, their silver hulls gleaming in the alien sunlight. Marcus immediately moved to shield her, but she caught his arm. "They'll shoot you on sight," she said desperately. "Unless... ... Unless what?" Zara's mind raced. There was one way, one chance to save them both, and maybe find a path to peace. But it would require a sacrifice she wasn't sure either of them was ready to make. "My betrothal," she said quietly. "I'm promised to General Corvin's son." Political alliance? But if I were to marry a human instead? It would create a scandal that reaches the highest levels of both governments. They'd have to negotiate. Marcus stared at her. "You're talking about sacrificing your entire future?" "No," Zara said firmly, stepping closer to him. "I'm talking about choosing it." Now, the patrol ships were descending now, and Marcus faced an impossible decision. His mission, his duty, his orders, or the woman who had somehow become everything to him in just a few short days. Marcus looked from the approaching Nexari ships to Zara's determined face, and in that moment, he made the choice that would define both their futures. Instead of reaching for his weapon or running for cover, he dropped to one knee and pulled off his grandfather's ring, a simple band of earth gold that had survived 3 generations of war. "Then marry me," he said, his voice carrying clearly over the sound of the landing ships. "Not for politics or strategy, but because I love you. 'Cause in all this darkness, you've become my light." Zara's crystalline blue skin flushed with silver, a sign of deep emotion among her people. "You don't understand what this means. You'll be seen as a traitor by your own kind, and mine will never fully accept you." "I understand perfectly," he replied, taking her hand. "I understand that some things matter more than war. Some connections are worth fighting for." The patrol ships had landed, and Nexari soldiers were emerging with weapons drawn. But they hesitated when they saw their princess standing freely beside a human soldier. No signs of coercion or capture. Princess Zara called the squad leader, his voice uncertain. "Are you injured? Has this human harmed you?" "No," Zara said clearly, her voice carrying the authority of her royal blood. She looked down at Marcus, still kneeling before her, and felt her heart make the choice her mind had been afraid to voice. "He has protected me, saved my life, and I am going to marry him." The words rippled through the Nexari ranks like shock waves. Marcus slipped his ring onto her finger, and as he rose, she threw her arms around him, kissing him with a passion that left no doubt about her feelings. "This is treason," one of the soldiers protested. "The general will never approve." "Then we'll make them understand," Zara said, turning to face her people while keeping Marcus's hand firmly in hers. "The war has gone on too long. Too many have died on both sides. If a Nexari princess and a human soldier can find love despite everything that should keep us apart, then perhaps our peoples can find peace." Marcus squeezed her hand. "The relay codes," he murmured. "I won't destroy it, but we need to change what it's used for." Zara smiled, understanding immediately. A new message, not colony locations, but an invitation to negotiate. The first step toward ending this war. As they walked toward the waiting ships, hands intertwined, neither knew what challenges lay ahead. There would be opposition from both sides, anger from those who preferred the clarity of conflict to the complexity of peace. But they had each other, and sometimes that was enough to change the universe. The human who had refused to sacrifice her had instead offered his heart. And in accepting it, Zara had found something worth more than any military victory, a future built on love rather than conquest. Behind them, the fortress that had seemed so imposing now looked like just another obstacle they could overcome together. After all, they had already proven that some barriers were meant to be broken.